when you first learned of that news of the bill just failing the Rotor Act, what was just your initial gut reaction to it?
So yeah, I was actually there in the gallery watching the vote. So I kind of watched it all unfold in real time, and we needed a 2/3 majority due to the way that they came to the floor, and the whole vote, it was teetering back and forth between having enough votes and not. And then as the gavel hit, we just fell one short, which was really a gut punch to all of us. There was a lot of tears and just disappointment in the family group that was there watching.
And you, of course, learned, I don't know if it was later that day, that night, and the days that followed, that one of our representatives here in Rhode Island, Representative Magaziner, was not present for that vote, and he has said in the days since that he would have voted in favor of the bill. When you find out that he wasn't present, again, just what was that feeling like?
It was a feeling of frustration. We kind of realized in real time, so many of us had directly reached out to a number of congressional offices in the weeks leading up to the vote to try to just confirm we had yes votes. So I had confirmed with his staff previously. I was sitting with somebody from Massachusetts who had confirmed with 3 of the Massachusetts delegation as well, and all 4 of them were not there. So it wasn't just something that I want to hang on Congressman Magaziner. There were quite a number of congressmen and congresswomen who were not there that day. But that was certainly disappointing. I know when we lost by 1 vote, you can actually see up on the wall who's voted and who hasn't, what their vote was. So I immediately looked up and saw the Rhode Island and Massachusetts gaps in that vote, and immediately we had a lot of just disappointment. But it was kind of part of a bigger story of how the vote came down. It wasn't just an attendance issue. There were also some other headwinds we were facing that week that also contributed. So it was really a perfect storm between the attendance issues along with some of these forces in the Congress and the Pentagon that were kind of working against the bill as we were pushing for it.
Do you mind kind of sharing what some of those headwinds that you and other family members kind of ran into and encountered in the days leading up to the vote?
So over the last 13 months, we really have seen a night and day difference with our engagement on the Senate side, House side. There are kind of 2 committees of jurisdiction in the Senate. There's a Senate Commerce Committee, which is chaired by Ted Cruz, and then the ranking Democrat is Marie Cantwell from Washington. They've been fantastic, both sides of the aisle. The entire committee has engaged with us, given us a seat at the table. We were able to put our imprint on this bill, the Rotor Act. It was introduced last July, so it's been in the works for quite a number of months, and passed unanimously out of the Senate Commerce Committee in October, 100%, Democrats, Republicans, even as the shutdown was going on. And then it passed unanimously in the entire Senate, 100-0 in December. So for us, this just felt like a no-brainer. If you look at what is in this bill, it's just common sense safety measures and responses to some of these risks that we're seeing. So contrast that with the House. We've been trying to engage with them all along. They pretty much have given us the stiff arm for 13 months. They wanted to wait for the NTSB report before they really did anything. And when the time came, the Rotor Act had already arrived in November. They ignored it, refused to act on it. And then a week before the vote was scheduled, they basically came out with a competing bill that has a lot of deficiencies in it. So it really created a lot of confusion. And then we had both the chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Sam Graves, as well as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the House, Mike Rogers, both on the House floor arguing against the bill that had both transportation and armed services implications. So for a lot of members of Congress, who even the ones that were there, that created a lot of confusion. And also we had an 11th hour response from the Pentagon. So the Pentagon had previously been consulted on the Rotor Act by the Senate. The Senate had made some changes based on their feedback. They had voiced their support for the Rotor Act, and then the day before the vote, they reversed that position and put out a statement saying they had concerns about the costs and the implications for national security. So it was really an environment of a lot of confusion among the people who were there, as well as compounded by this fact that we had so many people that were absent.
In that bill that they brought forth, that was the Alert Act.
Correct, yes.
Just want to make sure I have that right. And of course, you're touching on the outside pressure from the Pentagon that they put on some members of the House to vote against this bill, against the Rotor Act. And you mentioned that, the national security implications, and then we heard some members also mention it might be burdensome for some of the pilots. What would be your message to both, I guess, people in the House, people in the Pentagon who have that mindset mentality when considering the Rotor Act?
67 people are dead because a helicopter that was not broadcasting its location was flying through the most crowded airspace in the country and collided with a commercial airliner. So if we don't think that military aircraft on training missions should be broadcasting their location to nearby aircraft, and if we don't think that pilots in both commercial airliners and any other type of aircraft need to have technology that shows them other aircraft around them that might be on a collision course, that's just crazy to me. And I don't see how that's defensible. We're, the Pentagon spends a lot of money on a lot of things, especially this week. And the idea that they would claim poverty over the ability to equip their aircraft with critical safety technology that the NTSB has been recommending since 2008 is just not a credible argument. It's just not something that, is defensible. No one in the opposition to the Rotor Act actually provided any detail or good faith argument against it. It was all smoke and mirrors and misdirection on the part of the two committees along with Pentagon. So if you want to have an objective, show your math conversation about the costs, let's do that. But otherwise, what they did was unconscionable.
And you make a good point too. The director of the NTSB came out with a statement themselves and mentioned that they were in favor of
Correct.
this act passing. When you saw that, did you think that was going to be kind of the final nail in the coffin almost to get this
Yeah, the NTSB has supported this all along. The Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy, came out in support of the Rotor Act when it was first introduced. The FAA administrator was there at the introduction. It's just one of these bills that is a no-brainer and has broad support. And some of the misdirection that happened was when the Alert Act was introduced in the days leading up to the Rotor Act vote. The claim was that it more comprehensively addresses the NTSB recommendations. However, it does not. And the NTSB came out forcefully and said it doesn't. So that was, again, I believe, an intentional effort on the part of these committees to sow doubts and confusion around the Rotor Act. And it's not grounded in fact. It's really just smoke and mirrors. And for us as family members who have been fighting for this bill, it was really a slap in the face. This bill will save lives, and the more that we tie it up in bureaucracy and political games, the more likely it is that somebody else is sitting here without family members.
It's very powerful. And I guess to go off of that, yourself, other family members, where do you guys go from here? I know you've been mentioning that you've been having conversations with some members of the House who voted against the bill. I know Congressman Magaziner, other Congress men and women have mentioned that they want to bring forth this bill again into the House. What are you and other family members trying to do to sway people who voted against this bill in the first place?
Yeah, we have a few different pathways. We have not given up by any stretch. We got right back to it Wednesday morning after the vote and haven't taken our foot off the gas at all. And there's a few different ways that we can get there. Obviously, there are some ways we could get the Rotor Act back to the floor again for a more fair vote. One of those methods would be to do what's called a discharge petition. And this is a way that in the House you can bypass the committee of jurisdiction, which in this case is blocking us, and take it to the House floor. This was the technique that was used to bring the Epstein files bill to the floor. And it's very difficult to do. And in some ways, it's a little bit of a act of insubordination towards leadership if you're a Republican right now. So it's a big lift, but it's a pathway that we are certainly exploring along with the folks that supported the Rotor Act. It's also a case that we can go actually try to improve the Alert Act and put it through committee. So that's an avenue that we're also exploring. We did have a conversation with the committee leaders, staff, and voiced our concerns about it, and try to establish a path forward in improving that bill so that it actually does the things that the Rotor Act does. I'm not super optimistic about that, but we're going to give it a good faith effort, and I hope they do the same.
So you're offering suggestions and ways to tweak the Alert Act to make it kind of, obviously not make it a carbon copy of the Rotor Act, but just at least provide revisions in ways that most of the language use can be kind of implemented into the Alert Act. That way both sides can kind of find comfort.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, for us, the number one most important thing that the Rotor Act addresses really well is it mandates a use of technology called ADS-B-In, which is a collision avoidance technology. For me, as a layperson, after this collision took my family members, I was kind of sitting in these daily NTSB briefings, and it was just mind-boggling to me that this technology was already in use. It's just something in the age of GPS and smartphones. You just assume that a pilot in an aircraft that costs tens of millions of dollars would be able to see on screen whether aircraft are around. So that is really important to us. And we actually heard Chairwoman Comedy from the NTSB testify under oath that if that technology had been mandated on January 29th, 2025, our family members would still be here. So we are extremely passionate about that particular recommendation from the NTSB. It is not a recommendation unique to our crash. They've been recommending it to the FAA since 2008. They recommended it before my son Spencer was born. He was 16 when he died. They had his whole lifetime to get it right, and didn't. So for us, that's one is just non-negotiable to us. Another one is tightening the exceptions around military aircraft not having to broadcast their location. None of us are here saying that sensitive national security missions need to be broadcasting to the world where they are, or that flights with the president or members of the cabinet need to be broadcasting where they are. But a training flight, this is what this was, and it was not broadcasting. So we need to have common sense tightening of those loopholes so that the military has to act reasonably when it's in proximity to commercial aircraft in our airspace. So those are the two things that we are really fighting hard for, that the Rotor Act does really well. The Alert Act is just not addressing those in a meaningful way. It's kicking the ADS-B-In topic to the FAA's rulemaking process. What that means is that a bunch of special interests that don't want it to happen go get in a room and debate it for 2 years and pick away at it and stand up straw man financial numbers to say it can't be done, and it goes nowhere. And that's just not acceptable to us. And if that's the way that the Alert Act is going to come to the floor, we will be opposing it.
I wanted to ask you, Doug, we're just about a month removed from the 1-year anniversary of the crash. Just wanted to get a feel of just how you're doing, just emotionally, physically, mentally, just as time has progressed.
I would say, over the last 13 months, these advocacy efforts have been a real lifeline for me, because it's given me kind of a sense of purpose and a way to take all of this negativity and just unexplainable negligence that occurred to take my loved ones from me and turn it into something where maybe some good can come out of it. And the good will never equal the bad or offset the bad, but it's something that actually gives me a sense of purpose and a reason to kind of get out of bed every day. And I think that will continue. Obviously, it's really a travesty that family members have to do this at all. Like the government should follow the instructions of the NTSB and make these changes. They shouldn't take family members, traveling at their own expense to DC repeatedly to make this case. It shouldn't be having, chairmen of committees fighting against us to do the right thing, because they're, listening to the special interests more than they're listening to the pilots or listening to the family members that are affected by these things. So I'm obviously still quite sad. I still struggle with the fact that my son and my wife are not here. I'm a single dad who has to, guide my teenage son through a life without his mother and without his brother. But more than anything, I'm pissed off. Like, this is ridiculous. This needs to get solved. And it's ridiculous that Congress and the FAA require safety measures to be written in blood.
Very powerful and very well said. And other members of your family, I'm sure they kind of are feeling similar to you, especially over these past few weeks. And how have they just been doing going through this entire process?
Yeah, I would say my family, as well as our broader family group of Flight 5342 affected families, are just irate. This is something that makes no sense. It's indefensible, and we are up in arms wanting action on this. It's just, again, it's not something that anyone making a good faith argument could defend. It's purely just, people that have a philosophical objection to mandating safety requirements that are trying to wrap that up in a pretty bow to justify doing nothing. So we're angry is quite frankly where we are.
And I know you've already briefly touched on it. Of course, you're going to continue to have conversations with members in the House going forward. Is there anything else yourself, other family members are planning to do over these next few days, these next few weeks, these next few months, maybe even potentially the next few years, whether it be legislation or raising awareness in other avenues?
I mean, so right now what we're doing is we've set up a whole series of calls with members of Congress, particularly on these relevant committees that we need to have on board to really just make our case for why the way the Rotor Act implements some of these reforms is the right way to do it. So we're just going to keep doing that. We don't have a date yet definitively for when the Alert Act will actually be updated and presented at a committee markup. So we're keeping our eye out for that. In the meantime, we're just making the case to do this the right way. And that's going to be our focus for probably the next month or so. And I think we'll keep heads down on getting ADSB in mandated for all aircraft in all airspace. That's really our North Star right now. But I think beyond that, there are 49 other recommendations that the NTSB made. There is a lot of accountability that still must be sought from the FAA, from the Army, and from American Airlines and PSA Airlines. So we will tackle the most important ones first, but we will not stop until all 50 are addressed.
And I'm trying to think, let's say one day down the line, hopefully the Rotor Act or a revised version of the Alert Act with your revisions included is passed in the House. It gets signed into law by President Trump. What do you think that day will be like for you and other families?
I think it will be bittersweet in a lot of ways. I think we will all take a great deal of pride in getting that to the finish line, and the fact that while it won't bring our loved ones back, it will undoubtedly save future lives. We have zero doubt about that, as do many experts. So we'll feel a sense of pride in that. But I think, given the journey, there have been very positive aspects of that journey in terms of some of the engagement we've received in the Senate and even in the Department of Transportation and some of the other parts of government. I think exceeded our expectations and filled us with a lot of hope and optimism. But, I'd say the last month or so, and the fact that this is now taking longer than it really should and putting lives at risk in the meantime, and will leave a bitter taste to some extent. So I think it'll be bittersweet at this point. I think if it had happened last week, it would have happened less than a year from our first feet on the ground on Capitol Hill, which would have been a tremendous accomplishment, which we earned. We won't see that now, but we will still get it done, and we'll still take pride in it when it happens.